My first guest was a passenger on the Mavi Marmara, which came under attack en route to delivering much-needed humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. He's been an unapologetic voice of support for the Palestinians for years. Ken O'Keefe has just returned from Gaza after spending more than 6 months there with the people, where he witnessed firsthand the conditions under which they've been forced to live in an economy crippled by the siege. Welcome to the program, Ken. It's good to have you here on Terra Firma. In your own words, what did you see that gives the case for reconstruction?
Well, the Palestinian people are amazingly educated, hardworking, dignified people, and the problem is that they don't have the ability to access the resources in the rest of the world to import and export, and so they've been relegated to a state of charitable dependency. This is a very undignified way to live, and it's all part of a larger plan. As the Israelis very famously said, they would put the Palestinians in Gaza on a diet. And they have. And what's happened is you have doctors and lawyers that are actually picking up trash because it's the only job they can get. And this is very much harming the fabric of the society. And it really is not an accident. It's intentional. And we've institutionalized aid as a means of providing the kinds of things that are necessary to live. And it's causing deep problems, and it needs to end. There's no question of that. There's hardship on levels that most can hardly imagine coming from Western environments.
You were there when the Rafah Crossing was reopened. How much did that aid the situation?
It is really more of a public relations stunt at this point, and this is a sad truth. You know, with El Arabi, the foreign minister appointed in the aftermath of the fall of Mubarak, there was great promise there, but sadly El Arabi has now been giving, I think, a rather pointless position with the Arab League. And the words, I don't see substance behind them as of yet. And I believe really the key here is in the people, the power of the people. The Egyptians have proven that they can shed their dictator, but they have not yet won that revolution. They still have a government that's being bribed to the tune of $1 billion+ a year from the Americans. And let us make no mistake about it, it's bribe money to maintain the blockade and to maintain Zionist-controlled policies in the region. So only the people are going to change that.
All right, well, let's hear exactly what the UN said this week about the state of unemployment in the region, and your comments when we come back.
The UN has this week announced how far Gaza's stifled economy has taken a toll on people trying to survive in the Strip.
The UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, says in a new report that broad unemployment in Gaza in the second half of 2010 reached an unprecedented 45.2%.
The report also shows that wages are in decline, and the worst hit by this crisis were the 1.5 million refugees as well as the private sector.
Aid is required.
Mr. Nasirki went on to say there clearly is a need for aid to be taken to Gaza, but questioned how this should be done.
Is that there are established channels for such aid to be delivered, and at this stage it would seem to be preferable for it to be delivered in that way, rather than to risk further tensions of the kind that we saw a year ago.
Ken, you heard the comments there. What are those long-established aid routes, and just how effective are they for the Gazans?
Well, with all due respect to the good people within the UN is at the heart of this problem. The UN partition plan basically stole over half of the land of Palestine and gave it to people who didn't even come from that land. So from the very beginning, the UN has not been helpful to the Palestinian cause. The idea that there are accepted channels and that this is somehow sufficient to satisfy the needs of the Palestinian people is an insult to all of us who've spent time there. The fact is that Israel continues to maintain effective control over air, land, sea, and space, and the Palestinian people in Gaza have, in fact, been put on a diet. Beyond aid, what is needed is open borders with Egypt. Egypt is not Israel, and the Egyptian people have been shamed by Mubarak for over 30 years. It is time now to take pride in Egypt again, open up Rafah, and allow import and export trade. Forget the aid. Let us make aid unnecessary. It's not right. It must end.
What do people need? It seems almost stifling on a scale where you can't imagine just what would it take to reinvigorate the economy, to provide work, to provide employment, to get money flowing again. So on a personal level, what you saw told us what was needed.
Well, there's no question building materials need to be allowed, not just for the big NGOs, not just the UN, but for all people who want to rebuild their homes. That is absolutely necessary. Factories have been destroyed, and that's been very directly targeted. It's not an accident. The economy has been destroyed. Unless there's building materials allowed in, those buildings cannot be rebuilt. Raw materials such as textiles, Egyptian cotton would be very useful to be able to start developing the economy and developing the industries that can produce goods in Palestine that can be exported out. I want to bring in looms for the Samuni family to be able to produce Palestinian scarves, kufiyas. Can you imagine? If there were Palestinian scarves made in Gaza by the Samuni family, would there be a market for that? Of course there would, but they can't get in the raw materials, they don't have the machinery, and they can't export. That needs to end. That's just one example. Solar panels, so they can start developing their own energy needs without the use of the big power plant, which is constantly hit by the Israelis. There are many things that could be brought in. Forget about aid so much as we need to bring in the materials and the things that can get the Palestinians back on their own 2 feet so they can live a dignified life, and they are more than capable of doing that.
The next plans for the flotilla, very quickly. What have you got planned? When does it take off?
Well, the flotilla is coming in the next few weeks now, and although I won't be on the flotilla myself, I support it wholeheartedly. I have a convoy that's leaving in the next 2 weeks, so I will be on that coming through Rafah. The power of the people is paramount. We can achieve whatever we set our minds to. Forget the UN, forget the quartet, forget the EU. It is the people, and the people are coming on that flotilla, and they will not be stopped. And if Israel wants to kill 9 people or 90 people or 100 people, it doesn't matter. We're going to keep coming. We will never abandon the Palestinian people. The tide has turned. The Zionist project will end, and the people will be respected, and our rights will actually manifest. And it's because we realize that now, and thank God for that. Better late than never. We will have justice.
Thank you very much. And you'll, of course, be here to give us a bit more information as soon as that comes out.